Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mrs. Brown, Dr. Houston, or Mrs. Houston, I'm sorry.
You can call me Dr. Houston. Here.
Mrs. Tackett.
Here.
Mr. Rue.
Has proper legal notice been given of this hearing?
Yes, notice of a public hearing to consider the vacation of the first north-south alley west of North Light Street from Grant Street north to the south right-of-way line of the first east-west 16-foot alley. Attached here too are true and correct copies of the legal notices published on November 27th, 2024 and December 4th, 2024.
I move that the communication be ordered, received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop.
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. Staff report.
Good morning, everyone. The 10-foot public alley is part of plat map recorded, and return reports from utility companies state no concerns or objections. Columbia Gas has no known facilities located within the proposed alley. The alley is shown on slide, highlighted in yellow. Ohio Edison recommends approval. Ohio Edison commented that it has major overhead primary facilities along this right-of-way, which include direct service lines for customers in this immediate area. Approval is conditional upon the following. Any change in this right-of-way must include easement rights for occupation to allow access and assure working clearance to these facilities at all times. Clearances in proximity to any Ohio Edison facilities must be maintained at all times and must adhere to NESC and OSHA regulation. Return reports from city staff recommend approval of applicant's request. The vacated alley widths will be divided equally and deeded to adjoining property owners. Any easement rights will be maintained as commented by utility companies. The alley cannot be blocked for utility maintenance purposes. Any structure will have to comply with setback and area requirements and cannot be built on existing easements. It will be responsibility of owner to maintain and or locate any easements. So overall, staff recommendation is approval of applicant's request to vacate subject alley. The applicant's request was recommended approval by City Planning Board. Thank you.
Is there any comments from commissioners on the hearing? Dr. Estrop?
Were there any complaints received or concerns received before this commission meeting today?
There were no concerns or objections from neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments from the audience on this hearing only? Hearing none, is there a motion to conclude the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett.
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop.
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. The formal meeting of City Commission's called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown.
Here.
Dr. Estrop.
Here.
Mrs. Houston.
Here.
Mrs. Tackett.
Here.
Mr. Rue.
Here. Please stand for the invocation and the pledge. We will honor with a moment of silence two significant figures. One, former President Jimmy Carter passed away. We honor the service that he gave this country. And locally, we laid to rest Deputy Summer Jenkins yesterday. In honor of her, we will have a moment of silence as well. She was laid to rest at her home area. There a motion to approve minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. The City Commission remains committed to creating an environment that allows civil and constructive dialogue. As we work collectively to face the challenges in our community, we'll continue to have public comment period at the beginning of our time. Those wishing to speak must fill out a comment card in its entirety. No new cards will be accepted 15 minutes after roll call. Failure to complete this card with the information requested will be resulting ineligible to speak at that meeting. Speakers who reside in Clark County will be the only individuals invited to speak and must present either a driver's license or state-issued ID. If the speaker's been found to knowingly provide false information on public comment card, the result will be disqualification for speaking at this meeting and the next meeting. After the public comment period, we will hold City Commission comments to provide opportunities for commissioners to answer and respond to public comments. We will ask the city manager to answer any questions posed during the public comment period that do not require additional research. Questions requiring additional research by staff will be followed up over the next couple of days. The person asking the question will be contacted. Again, we want to create an environment that we can have constructive dialogue. We will continually to learn and evolve as we go on this process. Happy New Year. We'll go ahead and begin with comments. I've got several here. Begin with William Monaghan, 1323 Broadway Street.
Thank you, Mayor Rue, 1845 North Fountain Boulevard.
1845.
That's what I said. Thank you. Yeah, one of the problems I have with the current public comment period is you allow us to speak at the beginning, and then you guys address us at the end. Now, oftentimes at the end, you fail to address our questions, or you talk around them, or the veracity of what is said is questionable. And I have 3 examples from last meeting. And Mayor Rue, I do appreciate your addressing most of my concerns that I raised last week. One of your answers, and I understand you're saying, hey, I can't catch every instance of people talking from the floor during the meeting, and I can't catch every instance of somebody failing to address you directly, but addressing the audience. But the meeting before that, you allowed Jacob Payne's private videographer to literally stand right here, look down the aisle, and yell, wah, 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 at the top of his lungs several times. And while I get you can't catch every instance of people failing to address you or abusing the rest of the audience, that was hard to miss. So I I question the veracity of that statement that you try to apply those rules fairly. The other part of my concern of your address is you didn't address one of my concerns, which was you have a meeting from last summer where Ms. Brown used an expletive, and that was edited from the version on YouTube. I used an expletive not as part of the meeting, it was picked up on the mic, and that was left on there. And I'm wondering if it's your legal opinion that you're allowed to alter that public record, and if so, again, why you do it selectively to protect some people but not others. And that raises a concern about Ms. Brown's answer or response last week when she said that her use of that expletive was not an insult to the people here. What she'd said, and I know some people misunderstood, but what she said was, those people don't give an SHIT about this city. Now, these are people who've been showing up week after week after week to talk about problems exacerbated by your policies and problems that you admit are problems when you're going on TV asking for more federal deficit spending. But when we raise them, you mock us, call us names, and ignore us, and then ignore our questions. So I just want to set the record straight. That was an insult that Ms. Brown directed at her citizens. The other statement where I questioned the veracity was Dr. Estrop saying that Sheltered Inc. had promised that no people would end up homeless. They had promised that the people you were kicking out of Executive Inn wouldn't end up homeless. As far as I know, they did place them. They had some trouble, but they did place them. So to sit there and say that they promised not to let anybody be homeless, that it's somehow their problem and not yours, that we have people living in the park, living under railroad tracks, that's a lie. And you need to take responsibility for your actions and what you've done to this community. Thank you.
Larry Ricketts, 1736 North Fountain Boulevard.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of the People for Safe Water, we want to thank the City Commission and the City Manager for your continued support of the efforts to remediate the Superfund site located outside of the village of Tremont City. As you're aware, this site containing over 50,000 barrels of toxic waste is at present the only real threat to the aquifer and the drinking water of thousands of Clark County residents, including everyone in Springfield. This is one issue that all government officials are in total agreement on, and the efforts of the commission, along with German Township trustees and our state and federal officials over the past 4 decades, have brought us to a point that we may very well have shovels in the ground for the remediation of the project by the end of 2025. The U.S. EPA has assured us that this site is a high priority and are working with the principal responsible parties to get the project accomplished. As Dr. Eastrup has said on several occasions, and I'm going to paraphrase here, you don't, Dr. Eastrup, our water is our most valuable resource, and without good, clean drinking water, we as a community would be in big trouble. So again, thank you for your continued support, and we look forward to working with you on this in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Daniels, 40 Hedgley Road.
Good morning. I'm fresh as a daisy, so buckle up, Buttercup. I'd like to follow up with William Monaghan's little speech this morning. Dialogue requires a two-way street. I say something, you say something back. We have to wait till the end to get an answer, and if the answer isn't acceptable, we have to wait 2 weeks. I've waited 4 weeks to get an answer to my question, still haven't gotten it, so I know who I'm going to sue. Just letting you know. It comes to my attention that a lot of things get swept under the rug here, and instead of turning things into, say, for example, code enforcement, they will be turned into code enforcement if they are not followed up with. Then we will be doing what's called 77 South High Street. Have you looked that up? You know that address yet? I'm just telling you. So we will be pursuing it further up. Now, code enforcement is required to follow up on citizens' concern, follow up our grievances. We waited 1.5 years to have an illegal garage shut down. Citizens are now scouring the city and looking for other instances of code enforcement violations. Those will not be presented here. They will be presented to code enforcement. 2 weeks later, they will be followed up with. If they are not addressed, 77 South High Street will be notified. Okay? But we're not playing anymore. Come January 1st, things will be different here in town, because we're not going to stand up here and be tyrannized. I will take the words of Thomas Jefferson. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. And you're going to see that rebellion. Thank you.
Beth Donahue, 220 Montgomery Avenue.
Hi, my name is Beth Donahue. I'm with Springfield Domestic Violence Coalition. I would like Chief Allison Elliott to provide my answers to my questions today. Pardon me. I believe failure to provide answers to my questions today indicates a failure in police leadership and the Springfield Police Department. The topic is reported rapes in Springfield. Reported rapes have increased in Springfield every year since 2019. In 2023, Springfield ranked 6th in the state for reported rape per capita. As of December 1st, 2024, Springfield ranked 2nd in the state for reported rape per capita. In 2023, Springfield ranked 1st in the state of Ohio in reported rape of women aged 1 to 14 per capita, with 47 young girls reported being raped. That's only reported. The clearance rate for those reported rape in 2023 was 0%. 0. My questions to the mayor and Chief Elliott is, what is the count of reported rape from January 1st, 2024 to the end of November 2024? And 2, what is the count of those reported rapes that have been cleared? Is it 1 out of 20, 2 out of 20? What is it? I can provide data and sources for all statistics cited. I hope the city of Springfield will do the same today. Thank you.
Thank you. Peg Foley, 2121 Olympic Street.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to thank you and the members of the City Commission and really all the members of our city employee team for the work that you've done in the past year. It's been a very difficult time. And I, as a citizen of Springfield, really appreciate all of your work. Also, I am grateful to be able to live in the city of Springfield and be here in a forum where people can express opposing opinions, even though I disagree with some of the opinions expressed. At least we have the freedom to do so. And I think there are threats throughout our country to that freedom. And I'm glad that we at least still have that freedom here to express our opinion and live in a democracy. And finally, I really do think most of us have a common goal of living in a city where it is safe, a city that's prosperous, and a city where neighbors care about each other. I really do think most of us have that as a goal, and it's just a matter of how we get there. So again, thank you for your work, and I am happy to help as I can, and I'm sure there are many other people in this room and outside of this room who are happy to lend a hand and who have already lent a hand. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the end of the comment cards, unless you'd like to go ahead and submit one. We still have time for you to do that.
I do have one.
Why don't you just go ahead and say your name and address, and then you can go ahead and
Thank
speak for
you.
3
Good
minutes.
morning. Wasn't planning on speaking. We have a doctor's appointment this morning. Anyway, good morning. Happy New Year to you
Name
all.
and address for the record first,
Oh,
please.
thank you for
Thank you.
reminding me. 1420 Sunset Avenue.
Thank you.
In the news, all this, drone sightings, even to the point where locally, I'm sure everyone knows, they shut down the airspace temporarily at Wright Pat. Nationwide, some concerns, seem to be making headlines for quite a while, has sort of, dropped off the front burner. But as the National Security Advisor said at his podium when questioned, no, they didn't know where they were coming from, didn't know what they were, but they didn't seem to be posing any kind of threat, which, had a lot of backlash in the media. And my immediate thoughts were, well, whatever they are contained to the laws of this atmosphere. So even re-entry for space capsules burns things up. So I don't think they're foreign. They do seem to have LED lights. Makes you wonder if there's an auto zone somewhere in the outer atmosphere. Who they are, who's sending them, we don't know. But the answers from the public officials always seem to follow the same trend of we don't know what they are, but we don't think they're a threat, which is really a non-answer. Because if they don't know what they are truly, then they're incompetent. If they do know what they are and they're not telling us, then they're gaslighting us. Several things have happened this year that paralleled that experience out here. When questioned about the source of the bomb threats, we don't know. The FBI didn't tell us. You can follow up. All right. When it came to, do we actually have paperwork that says we're no longer in that network of welcoming cities? The city attorney got back with me and said, if you're asking me if I have anything in writing, the answer is no. I raised that only because I know that the mayor had to give himself special powers by a proclamation and then had to do something in paperwork to end those. So I kind of leave those questions there for now with you. I will see you in 2025. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Thank you for being here, at least to hear us, so we have a chance to have other people hear our concerns. And one last thing, into the new year, as part of the survey, one of the things that, of course, was not on there is that when questions are asked in this commission, there are people out there who may want to know. I know that a couple of weeks ago, I left early. I had a sick dog. I doubled back in to find a pen, and you gave me an answer, and that was great. Thank you. The dogs died. I can stay longer now, but posting answers to the questions asked on the city's webpage would be most helpful for those of us who, for one reason or another, are interested in what's going on in this town, but can't necessarily be there.
Thank you.
Wish you all well in 2025. Thank you.
Sorry about your dogs too. So we're going to go ahead and let commissioners answer. Aurora, I'll start just because that's fresh in your question. The difference in, go back to your question about a welcoming city resolution. Again, that is the definition of a resolution. It was not an ordinance or law at the sitting commission's time. Nobody was up here, I believe, on the commission when that was voted through, was to vote and to support. Just like we've supported levies, we've supported CTC. We voted to support that time, that particular, their goal, their agenda at the time. Okay, agenda is the wrong word, but just we supported it. And so that is not the same as what we did when a proclamation of emergency was made. That was an actual ordinance of emergency that had a timeline. It had to start and it had to finish, and both of those things need to be voted on. So that's the difference in the welcoming city, your comment there to the emergency ordinance. Okay, so that's just an answer for that. Thank you for coming in and speaking, of course. Mr. Modigan, I try to answer your questions the best I can, trying to do the best I can for you, try to keep people from your quote unquote abusing the audience. I don't like to see that either. So we will field your comments and we will hear them and try to answer them the best I can. But I don't believe I'm going to give you an answer that you'll ever want to hear to the best of your ability. So I'm glad you get to speak for 3 minutes, and then I will answer the best I can for you. And thank you for being able to express your freedom to speak to us. Okay. And I know that Chief Allison Elliott is on vacation. I promise that every commissioner up here and city member does not want to see we don't like to hear the rape stats either. Don't like to see anybody hurt like that or in any way. And so the information that the city manager will provide through our law enforcement will get to you, but it's definitely a concern of ours as well. Okay, I think there's maybe other comments from commissioners. Dr. Estrop?
First of all, Happy New Year, everyone. Let's go back to that special meeting on Monday, where we were being asked to approve a contract with Homeful for the homeless issue. As you will recall at that special meeting, many people spoke against the contract. And subsequently, I voted no on the contract. And as I recall, sir, you were one of those cheering us on to strike down the contract. Well, that day we did. And the commitments made that got my vote were twofold again. One, no one would be on the street. No one would be on the street because Shelter Inc. said that won't happen. And in fact said, we don't even need the executive in to stand behind that promise. Furthermore, there was a commitment made that the city, if they voted it down, would save $1 million. Well, if we're going to save $1 million, we can't have a program. And since Shelter Inc. agreed at that point to take responsibility for the homeless in our community and did not need city support for it, I changed my vote. And you, among others, cheered that vote. So I find your comments to be disingenuous, to say the least.
Please, this isn't back and forth. No, you can go ahead and leave. Thank you. You can go ahead and leave. Thank you, Bill. We'll see you next year, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Bill, you can leave now. We'll see you next year. He's not lying. Thank you. Okay, YouTube. Yes, excellent. Thank you.
As I was saying, the comment made was that no one would be put on the street. No one. That Shelter Inc., with the support of OIC, could take care of the homeless issue in our community. And in the process, we would save $1 million. Those were the two questions, two comments I asked, and I stand by them. So when the contract was defeated, the city's commitment saved $1 million, and Shelter Inc. assumed responsibility for the homeless. Now, at this point, we have a new RFP that is on the street that has city funding, among other sources of funding, behind it. And I hope several agencies, including Shelter Inc., will in fact seek to make a proposal in regard to that request for proposal. Because the homeless issue continues to be a problem here in Springfield, no doubt about it. But it's going to be an issue that's only resolved by us working together. And back on that Monday meeting, it was evident to me that we were not working together. In fact, we were pulling apart. And as a result of pulling apart, it was not going to work. So now we need to come together. I encourage organizations to make proposals or to work with other organizations and make a combined proposal in response to our RFP. And I'm looking at Brian, how long, or Logan, how long is that still on the street, that request, or is it in?
January 17th.
January 17th. So those who are interested in providing services to the homeless with money from the city and other governmental sources should certainly be taking a serious look at that proposal, at that request for proposals, so in fact we can together address the issue. Thank you very much.
Dr. Astrup, I think it's fair to say that there were promises made by OIC and Shelter Inc., not just Shelter Inc.
Well, that's what
To
I
be
said.
fair. Okay.
Shelter Inc.
And OIC.
with the support
Yep.
of
Okay.
OIC.
Just want to
I
make sure
believe
that
I
was
said
plainly
that.
said.
And
Okay.
I do
Other
want to
comments?
just
Go ahead.
add an amendment to that. I think it is important to say that on that evening, it was discussed that they would house the individuals at the executive inn. I think that was the semantics piece that had the gentleman upset. During that vote, which I did vote against, and still stand on that, to not pay someone for not doing the full job that we were paying them for. And the discussion that night, which then Dr. E joined Commissioner Tackett and myself in voting against that, was specifically that they would house the individuals that would have been impacted by the closing of the executive inn. So we can continue to beef with one another over semantics, or we can just cut it to the chase. So instead of yelling and saying someone is a liar, let's just address the semantics. So that's what I wanted to address. And I think that was the missing key that did make him upset, and it would make you appear to not be telling the truth. So hopefully that clears that up as well. For other comments that concern myself, I have nothing else to say on that.
Other comments from commissioners? Okay. Answers from city staff?
Yeah, specifically, there weren't really any too many questions related to that. I did want to seek one clarification just to make sure, because we follow up on all the addresses. Diana, when you're referring to 77 South High Street, you're speaking to the Rife building in Columbus, correct? Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because we don't have a 77 South High Street, but yeah, gotcha. So, understood. So I just wanted to clarify that. Also, I know, Rob mentioned that Allison is out. I saw Captain Zawada talk with Mrs. Donahue, and so we will work with our detectives unit and stuff to get comprehensive data on that. I'm sure Tom shared that with. So we will work to get that data from our detective bureau.
And then, just because I know we've said that up here, our answers to these questions are being posted when opportunity arises. Is that right, on our website?
Correct.
Where can people find that on the website?
On the main page.
On the main page?
Yeah.
Does it say questions from commission?
It's questions from commission. It's the questions that typically are the ones that we have to follow up with additional data. If you would like us to start posting questions to even the live answers that we do, we can start doing.
If the question's not answered here, this is what we said in the beginning. If the question's not answered here, we will
We
follow
will
up with
post
the
them.
people and we'll also post them on. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. So that's happening. Okay, thank you. If it's okay with commission, I'd like to go ahead and push through without a break. We okay with that?
Absolutely.
Excellent. We'll continue on with first readings by title only.
Vacating the first north-south alley west of North Light Street from Grant Street north to the south right-of-way line of the first east-west 16-foot alley. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Brentag Mid-South Incorporated for the purchase of sodium hypochlorite for use by the city's wastewater treatment plant for an amount not to exceed $205,200. Confirming and approving the First Amendment to the Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Program Grant Agreement through the Ohio Department to extend the grant to June 30th, 2025. Confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract between the city and Jess Howard Electric Company for the Install Runway 624 Vertical Visual Guidance System project to decrease the contract in an amount not to exceed $209,113.74 for a total contract amount not to exceed $362,918, and to extend the project completion date to April 19, 2024, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2.
Okay, that concludes first readings. Is there any explanations for the city manager before we have comment?
Yes, Commission, I'll,
Commissioners.
real quick, item 316-24, this is the purchase of liquid chlorine that is used for disinfectant at the wastewater treatment plant. Just to note, the cost, so the cost has gone down from our last year's pricing from $1.97 per gallon to $1.71 per gallon. But note that in 2019, prior to COVID, we were paying 69 cents per gallon. So it's still up substantially from what we used to pay. Item 045-22, which is the amendment to the Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Program. This is a grant that we received through the state of Ohio, actually the use of their ARPA dollars introduced into this grant program, and this was for the North Ridge Water Line project. And so this was a partnership or collaboration with Clark County Utilities and to provide a loop feed for the water system that feeds North Ridge. The project is actually complete. The work is done, but final invoicing will be paid out or finalized after the first of the year. The grant expires as of today. So working with the state, they asked us to extend that through June 30th. And then the final item, which is the change order number 2 to the contract with Jess Howard Electric Company. This is for the runway lighting system out at the airport, specifically the main runway 624. And this is a decrease. And the decrease is because as they examined and inspected the existing parts and components, many were found to still be in good working order. So we did not have to pay to replace those parts and components as a part of the project, which led to the substantial change order and deduction.
Thank you. Other comments from commissioners on first readings? Dr. Estrop?
Great news on the decrease. I'm glad to hear that. That's pretty substantial. Congratulations.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to second readings.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with CBT Company for preventive maintenance services on variable frequency drives at the water treatment plant for an amount not to exceed $234,087.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the issuance of a purchase order for the purchase of 6 sludge to waste pumps and 4 sludge circulating pumps from the Henry P. Thompson Company for an amount not to exceed $209,500.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners, from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase agreement with the Clark County Land Reutilization Corporation for the sale of certain real property, being 32 parcels located throughout the city of Springfield.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? Dr. Esprop?
I was wondering if you might review for all of us again what this involves.
Yeah, I'll actually see if Logan and/or Steve would like to speak to the partnership that we have with the land bank and the construction of new homes.
Commission, Mayor Rue, good morning. This is an agreement with Clark County to build 8 new homes out on Grand Avenue. They have already moved forward with their construction contract and are looking for those homes to be built in 2025.
Thank you.
Great.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the expenditure in an amount not to exceed $114,586.68 to contract with Superior LLC, a Central Square company, to provide the city with maintenance services for various computer software applications for the period January 1, 2025 through December 31, 2025, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners, from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to apply for and accept a fiscal year 2026 Ohio Transit Partnership Program grant, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation in an amount up to $680,800 for preventive maintenance, operating assistance, ADA paratransit, and planning activities, authorizing the city manager, finance director, and law director to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said grant application and corresponding agreement, and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements, and to provide assurances and additional information as required by the Ohio Department of Transportation, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Could we have staff explain this very quickly?
Yes, specifically, Commission, this is our annual funding that we apply for through the state of Ohio as part of our transit operations. I want to call out that, so last year we requested the same amount and received substantially less. We only received 70,000 of the 680,000 requested. Transit funding, specifically at the state, ebbs and flows, so we've requested the same 680,000, hoping that we get closer to that amount. I know, Commission as well, just to update you, we continue to look at the microtransit opportunity and to move our system into that microtransit model. I'm happy to report that as of last Friday, we did actually receive 3 proposals this time. If you recall, the last time we did not receive any proposals. And so staff is currently reviewing those, and we're hoping that we're able to bring you a contract for a change to a microtransit system here in the near future.
Thank you. Other comments from the commission? Dr. Estrom.
I was wondering, Mr. Heck, if you or Mr. Villa might tell us a little more about the difference between the current transit system and this micro.
Yeah, I'll have Jason speak to the current fixed route versus the microtransit model.
Good morning. Thank you for your question. As you're aware, we currently operate a fixed route transit system. So we have 7 continuous routes that operate 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and also an ADA and paratransit system and dial-a-ride, which is called a call to provide service or schedule ahead. So what we are looking to accomplish is technologically enhanced service to meet the current need of both the employers and the citizens who can't always get where they need to be in the right amount of time. So we are looking forward to leverage technology and efficiency to have a demand response system that better serves the community.
Thank you. Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Chemical Services Incorporated for the purchase of liquid ferric sulfate 60% for an amount not to exceed $167,850 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an amendment number 3 to the agreement with the Board of County Commissioners of Clark County, Ohio, for the maintenance and lease of the Municipal Court County Offices Building to extend the agreement to March 31, 2025, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. You want to speak to this, Brian, please?
Yes, Commission. The last 2 years, we've been operating off one-year agreements for the lease of the municipal court building. So as we know, the municipal court building is owned by Clark County and the Board of County Commissioners, and so we lease that space for the municipal court operations. Also noting that the municipal court operation serves more than just the city of Springfield, it serves county-wide. And so we've been working towards a longer-term agreement and just have not been able to come to terms on that yet. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get that done in the first quarter of this year, but in the meantime, putting in place a 3-month extension to give us additional time and opportunity to work between the two parties to come to terms on that agreement for that building.
Excellent. Dr. Estrop?
I noticed in this resolution that on the printed agenda, the extension date is to March 31st, 2024. Now, I know Regina read 2025, and it's clear the intent is 2025. So those who have our agenda, it may have the wrong date on it.
It was updated this after the agendas were printed. My apologies.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving a joint law enforcement operations task force obligation document to obtain funding of up to $21,500 for task force officer overtime reimbursement for the period of October 24, 2024 through September 30, 2025, pursuant to the Memorandum of Understanding between the city and the United States Marshal Service, authorizing the city manager and the chief of police to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the fiscal officer to establish super blanket purchase orders as authorized in resolution number 6152 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Reappointing Adam Lip to the Melody Parks New Community Authority Board of Trustees and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners?
from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Mrs. Brown?
It's okay. He's at home. Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Appointing Cassie Scott to the Melody Parks New Community Authority Board of Trustees and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commission? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
And the new items on the agenda, providing for supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Amending ordinance 23-381 to revise the transfer of monies authorized and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
I was wondering if you might explain exactly, Katie, what we've got going on.
Certainly, Commissioner. So the reason that this is added as an add-on is we are waiting every year until the end of the year, quite literally up until the very last day with this meeting, falling on December 31st, to see where our cash balances are going to end up and determine if we're able to transfer the monies out that we presented in the 2025 budget for revised 2024 to various funds. So this specifically, I'll just highlight that the general fund is transferring out. As you'll recall, all fire division costs are now in the fire division service enhancement fund instead of the general fund. So that's roughly $17.7 million. And we made additional investment in infrastructure and capital investments out of the permanent improvement fund. So the general fund transferred $5 million there. And then to the economic development fund and special police levy fund, $800,000 each.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Reappointing Valerie Moore to the Board of Health of the Clark County Combined Health District and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience?
I do have a comment. I'm really excited to see her serving in this role. She's amazing.
Awesome. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Okay, that concludes our agenda. Is there other comments from commissioners?
Mine's just, well wishes into the new year to our community and looking forward to great things in 2025.
Well, thank you for coming. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Commissioners, real quick, I just wanted to close the loop on one item that was mentioned during the public comment period, and we can mention it again next meeting, but I thought it was important. I know there was no additional information from Commissioner Phillips or comment about it, but July 16th meeting is where that was said. We had staff go back and confirm just now, and that video has not been edited. Her explicitive is still there, as is Mr. Monahan's that was present in the video that he had. So that has not been edited or removed. So it is still there.
So
July
that's what
16th.
I know. That's what I know. That's exactly why I said I had nothing else to say about that topic, because I feel like I said everything I needed to say about that previously, and there's no need to perseverate on it. And hopefully, with that new addition, that the perseveration with that comment can end.
The one other thing I think, now that you brought that up, the way we set these meetings up several months ago is the community is able to speak for 3 minutes uninterrupted without going back and forth like we did for the first half of the year that was not productive. So the community gets to speak for 3 minutes, completely open, and then we speak, and there's no interruption. I find that is, and I think the commission agrees,
That is a better way we can listen to each other instead of going back and forth like that was displayed earlier that caused a significant interruption in our meeting. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And I can tell you that each one of these commissioners wants to do the best for the community that they can do within their authority that they've been given by the people. Thank you for being here. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Happy New Year. Thank you.